Waitress gets $4K tip, but her boss refuses to give it to her.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
Her feet were aching as she neared the end of another grueling shift. The young waitress didn't plan on being there forever, dreaming of one day saving up enough to pay her student fees and starting a better life. She was already in shock when she saw the life-changing tip on the table, but when her boss snatched it away from her, the waitress was reduced to tears. Shakira Edwards has worked part-time at Denny's for 3 years to pay her way through dental school. The dedicated young woman could put up with being ordered around for the chance to secure her future, but dreamed of the day when she could finally hang up her apron for good. As she got ready for another long shift, Shakira looked at herself in the mirror and imagined how it would feel to be debt-free. On that morning, she was about to find out. It was common for Shakira to have to deal with difficult customers, so encountering a kind and thoughtful diner would always take her by surprise. The woman she was serving that morning was a breath of fresh air on what had been a very stressful morning. "She appreciated my smile," beamed Edwards. It was only when she started to clear the table after she and her husband left that she realized just how much. Sat there on the table among the dirty dishes and coffee dregs was an astonishing tip paid by credit card for over $4,000. Shakira stared at the check open-mouthed and picking it up. Her hand shook as a rush of emotion overwhelmed her. It was like being handed a winning lottery ticket. She didn't like to bother him, but after drying the tears from her cheeks, she put on a brave face and approached her manager to tell him the good news. Shakira had already begun spending the money in her head. After paying off some of her $33,000 student debt, she'd hoped to donate to a mentorship program that helps teens with depression. "It's such a blessing to have good people like that. God did answer my prayers because He knows what I go through," she later told Fox 13 News. But her boss pulled the rug right out from underneath her. Shakira's manager looked at the enormous sum on the check in utter disbelief. Could this be right? He'd heard of waitresses receiving huge tips like this before, but he'd never seen it happen on his watch. After some deliberation, Shakira's manager slid the check into his pocket and said, "I'm sorry, but this is staying with me." And then he explained that if she really wanted it back, she'd have to do something for him. Shakira's manager calmly informed her that he might let her have the money, but there was a catch. The exhausted waitress couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I'm hurt that they would tell me something like this as a business, and as being the owner to tell me that this is the only resolution, as if I'm wrong to ask for something I know I deserve," she sobbed. Shakira started looking up other waitresses who had received astonishing tips and found nothing but heartwarming stories of hardworking waitresses who'd seen their dreams come true. Most waitresses in the United States earn between $298 and $500 a week, so a tip like this was enough to make them break down in tears. That was her future in her manager's pocket, but could she ever do what he was asking? There was just no way. Shakira could turn her entire life around, but what she would have to do to get it was too much. She looked at her graduation photo and remembered the only thing that mattered was to pay down her debt and become a full-time dental assistant. After a stiff drink, Shakira knew what she had to do. Her manager had told her that in order to process the tip, she'd have to track down the customer and confirm that they really intended to leave such a huge tip. But how could a dental assistant that worked part-time at Denny's find someone who wasn't even a regular customer? Shakira contemplated what the manager was doing and trying to decide on the best course of action. She wouldn't be surprised if someone at the restaurant tried to keep it for themselves, she thought to herself. She knew that the business was short-staffed, low on supplies, and was defined by low morale, and then she had an idea. Shakira took to Facebook and to Twitter in hopes of finding the person who had left her such a generous tip. But after weeks with no leads, her search had turned up nothing. But although netizens couldn't help her track the tipper down, they were sitting up and taking notice of her story. Soon, Denny's Facebook page was flooded with comments from people who'd read about the story. Everyone thought that Denny's had no right to withhold a tip from one of their employees. One user wrote, "Are you kidding me? I'm sure there's some loophole that will allow them to justify keeping it. Even with a winning ticket, just can't win." And it wasn't long before the local news stations got involved as well. Shakira contacted the local news to tell them her story in the hope that the customer would see the broadcast. The waitress felt Denny's had shamed her by suggesting she should have been more diligent at her job and blamed her for spreading misinformation. Shakira was incensed and she had every right to be. She'd worked the long hours and had never complained, but this was just too much. "You're gonna tell me that it's my fault that I didn't get the information on a customer when they left and tipped me," she said. I don't know who tipped me. Denny's would like to make it clear that we would never withhold tips or wages from any of our employees. However, Denny's also has an obligation to ensure that our guests are charged the proper amount for their meals, Denny's said in a statement. In this case, Denny's was obliged to investigate and verify the guest did in fact intend to leave such a large tip. Not many people are aware that workers in the service industry aren't paid the same ways as those with jobs in other industries. They receive a tipped minimum wage which amounts to a fraction of the federal minimum wage. Tips are designed to cover the rest of the server's income, but there's no guarantee that they will. This leaves servers beholden to the whims of their paying customers, and it's an unfair system. Would Shakira get what she deserved? Denny's has met with Miss Edwards and advised her of the outcome of the investigation, and we understand the disappointment our server must feel in receiving this news. Denny's said in a media statement. Unfortunately, Shakira was about to receive some bad news. We conducted a thorough investigation into this matter and has discovered the tip in question was made in error, the statement continued. It was ultimately determined that the guest, who's elderly and unfamiliar with the debit system used at this location, entered a tip amount of $4,451.61 when he intended to leave a tip of $4 on his bill. We've also taken steps to ensure that the staff is better equipped to handle similar situations in the future, the spokesman continued. Denny's is committed to both our guests and our employees and will always seek to provide the fairest and most reasonable resolution under any circumstances. Will Shakira get what she deserves in the future?